On the 22nd of November 1963, President John F. Kennedy was shot and killed as he rode in the presidential limousine through downtown Dallas, Texas. Lee Harvey Oswald, a former Marine and defector to the Soviet Union, was later arrested and charged for the murder. However, Oswald never stood trial as he too was shot and mortally wounded just 2 days later. What followed in the hours, weeks, months, and years after the 35th President of the United States' death was a series of pretty sketchy incidents and reported cover-ups, leading many to question what actually happened that day and who could have been behind it. Welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm Rebecca Felgate, and today we're asking who actually killed JFK. John F. Kennedy won a narrow victory in the contentious presidential race against the incumbent Republican former Vice President Richard Nixon, and he took office in January 1961. Several key issues marked his presidency. He was at the forefront of the Cold War negotiations with Soviet Russia. He tried and failed to overthrow Fidel Castro in the Bay of Pigs invasion, and subsequently rejected suggestions of false flag attacks on home soil. He wanted to end conflict in Vietnam. He supported the Peace Corps and civil rights movements. Also, many suggested he was planning on dropping Vice President Lyndon Johnson from his ticket in the 1964 elections. All of these things are worth noting when considering who may have had motivation to assassinate the president. The official story goes that former Marine marksman and Soviet Union supporter Lee Harvey Oswald shot John F. Kennedy 3 times from the roof of a Texas school book depository. He was later arrested when he killed Dallas patrolman J.D. Tibbett and was then declared the perpetrator behind the president's death. Many are skeptical about this official line. After his arrest, Oswald later protested his innocence, saying, "They've taken me in because of the fact I lived in the Soviet Union. I'm just a patsy." There are also some suggestions he would not have been able to make it to the scene where Tibbett was shot from the location and the time he was last seen. Oswald was indeed a marksman, but a second-rate one, and many have cast doubt on whether he would have been able to fire the alleged 3 shots it took to kill JFK in just 8.3 seconds. Furthermore, no recordings were made of Oswald's 13-hour interrogation following his arrest, and there was no lawyer present. He was then of course killed just days later, which many see as a clear sign that he was silenced. Aside from questions about Oswald himself, many reports do not corroborate the official conclusion. The most popular theory is that there was a second shooter. The sources that back this up are acoustic recordings from the scene, the position from which one of the shots hit, the number of shots reported, and first-hand accounts from bystanders on the grassy knoll. Strange goings-on that have lent fuel to this conspiracy fire include suggestions of faked autopsy pictures and questions about who was present during the autopsy itself. Some have even gone as far as to suggest that the president's body was tampered with by conspirators in Air Force One who did not want the public to see his real injuries. Further questions about the possibility of a second shooter have arisen from suspicious characters present as the president's motorcade drove by. A man holding an umbrella despite the fact that it was neither rainy nor particularly hot. A police officer with a badge who could have been impersonating an officer. A man with a black dog, and what some call a dark-complected man that could have been of Cuban descent. If there was a second shooter, was this a coordinated attack? Well, a significant percentage of Americans polled still believe the murder to have been part of a wider plot. Many conspiracy theorists suggest that Fidel Castro himself was behind the organization of the murder as a retaliation to the Bay of Pigs attack, or it could have been a coordinated attack with Soviet Russia. Others say it was a Zionist conspiracy as Kennedy opposed Israel's nuclear program. Others look internally at American officials, suggesting it could have been a political hit from people who wanted war in Vietnam, such as rich defense contractors. It has been suggested that the CIA were behind the hit, saying the Joint Chief of Staff wanted a more aggressive leader, especially when it came to Russia, Cuba, and Vietnam. Again, some point the finger at the Federal Reserve, who were concerned that the president wanted to transfer their power to the United States Department of the Treasury. Some theorists have even implicated Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson, who was reportedly aware that Kennedy wanted to drop him as VP, and Johnson wanted the top job himself. This suggestion is backed up by his former mistress, Madeleine Brown, who says that he told her the night before the assassination that the Kennedys will never embarrass him again. Of course, after Kennedy's death, President Johnson won the next election and stayed in power until 1969. Some theorists believe one or more of these groups collaborated with the Secret Service, who failed to protect him and have been accused of destroying evidence after his death. For example, the presidential limousine was taken away for repair days after his death before it was examined by forensics. Weird. In 1979, the United States House Select Committee on Assassinations concluded that JFK's death was part of a wider conspiracy. While not the official line, the common belief among conspiracy theorists is that Lee Harvey Oswald was a pawn in a wider chess game and could not have realistically been the sole shooter, if he even was the shooter at all. Personally, I'll have to admit that JFK's death was sketchy, and because of the murder of Oswald, who cannot defend himself, the time that has passed since, the destruction of evidence, and the dying out of first-hand witnesses, we may never actually know for certain who killed JFK. So that's all we have on this episode of Life's Biggest Questions. We know that this is a huge topic, impossible to cover in a few minutes, so do leave your thoughts and discussion points on what you think happened in the comments section down below. For now, stay curious, stay alert, and never ever stop questioning.